Hey geeks, welcome to another exciting episode of Rockin the Code World with dotNetDave. I'm David McCarter, and I'm glad you're all here. It's almost summertime. Doesn't really look like it outside too much, but I know it's coming, so I'm excited for that. And I'm glad you're here. And my guest today's Alan Hyneman. He's a chief solutions architect, and I'm really excited to talk to him. Alan and I had a pre-meeting last week, and he showed me what he's going to show you, which is a framework that he's built called SQL Plus, which really looks really cool. And I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. So stay tuned for the whole show. Don't click off. Don't go do something else. You need to watch Alan because you're going to like this, I think, especially if you're using SQL Server, which I think most of us are one way or the other, or Postgres or something, but you get the idea. So that's going to be exciting. And also I was thinking, this is show 80. I can't believe, Simon, we've done 80 shows already. I can't even remember most of them, I can tell you the truth at this point. I'm really excited. So I was here listening to the song, and I was going, well, I think, Simon, I don't know, you can calculate it for me, but I think we might hit, might hit 100 episodes by the start of season 4, which is the beginning of October. So if we hit 100 on the beginning of season 4, I think that'll be pretty cool. And I'm already working on a guest for the first episode of season 4. You're going to love this guest. So I'm working on that right now. So I'm pre-planning already in October for the show already. So, and with that said, I want to hear from you. Who do you want me to invite on the show? I ask you guys this all the time. I don't get any feedback. I really want to know, who do you want me to invite on the show? This is your show. It's not my show. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy hosting it. I enjoy, talking to my guests every week, and I enjoy talking to Simon, my producer. But this is really your show, especially since I don't make any money off of it. So I want to hear from you. Who do you want me to invite? I'll invite anybody except for Bill Gates and Scott Guthrie. So anybody else, give me their name. I'll invite them. I'll try to make it happen. I can't guarantee I can get anybody you ask, but I will definitely try. And so send me an email. The email's at the end of the show, so stick around for that, or tweet at me. You can tweet who you want me to invite on the show, but this is your show. So you tell me who you want to be on the show. Even if it's a past person that's been on the show, I'll ask them back. So you tell me. Okay. So I've only got a couple slides in the beginning to talk about because I want to give a lot of time to Alan and SQL Plus. So don't forget, the 2 weeks from yesterday is the Code Quality Conference. I'm really excited about that. It's on June 2nd, all day long. We've already picked all the sessions. Simon's going to have that up on the website very soon. Right, Simon? And then we're going to start promoting it next week. And we have a great lineup. I'll be doing my coding standards talk, so I hope you'll stick around, at least come for that. Well, I hope you come for all the sessions, but I'll be doing my coding standards talk, which I haven't done in a while, so I've got to update it. I got to get on the ball. I haven't updated it yet. I've been thinking about it, but I haven't done it. So I'm really looking forward to this conference because, code quality is something I see lacking in all the projects I'm hired onto. And so that's why this conference is really important to me. I've been wanting to do a conference like this for many years. And so I'm really thankful that CSharpCorner gave me the opportunity to do this. I wish we could do it in person, but that's the way of the world right now. It's going to be virtual. I don't think it'll ever be in person, but maybe someday, I hope. So also, don't forget, my new book is out on code performance. Rock Your Code and App Performance over Microsoft.net. I hope you go pick up a copy. I've worked really hard on this book. I learned a lot in writing this book, and I'm sure you'll learn a lot too. And actually, recently, I've been writing tests I've been rerunning all the tests for this book because I need that data when I speak in Copenhagen in August. So I'm running those right now. They take many, many days to run all the tests for this book. So I can't run them all at one time. So I hope you go pick up a copy of that. Also, I have new versions of Spargin out. My open source libraries and NuGet packages are released. I hope you'll download those and use them. I use them in all the projects I work on, even the work projects I work on. I incorporate that too, because Spargin is all the common code I've been writing since basically .NET 2 is all here. And I use it everywhere I go because I don't like writing the same thing over and over again. I don't know if you do, but I certainly don't. And that's why Spargin's around. So I hope you go check it out. I also released a new version of Spargin Dev Tool. I actually posted a new version this week. And I hope you'll check that out too, because I use this tool every day, and I hope you will too. And I'm looking for feedback. So please download it. Give me some feedback. I don't see anybody using it. I have it hooked up to Azure Insights, Application Insights now, so I can tell who's using it. And so far, it's basically me and one other guy that I'm trying to figure out some issues on his computer, and that's it. So come on, download it, try it, free. It's free. What do you have to lose, right? All right, with that, I want to bring on Alan. Alan's an industry veteran with nearly 4 decades of experience working primarily in Microsoft technologies, with a recent focus on distributed applications utilizing Blazor wasm for UI and AzureSQL and Azure functions for services. So welcome, Alan.
Thank you, Dave. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Have to excuse my voice and my eyes and my nose. We are in full swing allergy season here.
Yeah,
and
I
just had a bit of a sneezing fit.
I did too, right before the show.
It's that time of year. So
yeah, where do you live again? I forget.
What's that?
Where do you live again? I forget.
I'm west of Reading, Pennsylvania.
Oh, Pennsylvania. Yeah.
About an hour outside of Philly.
Yeah, that's where I was born in Delaware. So
okay.
Yeah, I lived back east until the end of 4th grade. Okay. And we lived in when we left Delaware, we were living in Newark, Delaware. I was born in Wilmington, supposedly in the same hospital as Valerie Bertinelli and Billy Idol.
Okay. So you got the genes.
Yeah, and I think Valerie Bertinelli and I were pretty close to the same date. So I don't remember seeing her there because I was a baby, but I wish I saw her there because maybe I could have married her instead of Eddie Van Halen.
Oh, poor Eddie. Boy.
I know. I feel so bad. I wish he would have stopped smoking. He could have been around longer, I think, if he stopped.
We've lost our fair share of rock stars.
I know. We're losing some of the greatest musicians on the planet, right? We lost Prince. We lost
Neil Peart.
Neil Peart. Oh my gosh, Eddie's gone. David Bowie. I was really sad when that happened because I listened to him in middle school and he's truly one of the true greats of musicianship in the world ever, and I'm sad to see him go and be replaced by crap stuff like what's her name?
We don't have to name names. We know that our generation had the best music.
We did.
We had by far
the pop music now is just horrible.
Yeah,
just manufactured by machine, horrible. Manufactured by a huge team of people instead of the actual musicians themselves. And it's and people pay thousands of dollars to see this, and I just don't get it. I know you and I have been around a long time, and we experienced the the 70s and before, and 80s, and to see what's going on in pop music now, it just makes me sick.
It
Tell you the
is. It
truth.
is disheartening.
Yeah, it's and I mean, $5,000 for a ticket to see a show. Come on, that's just insane,
Yeah.
right? Don't you
And
think?
I do think that's
Yeah.
insane. And it's not for lack of talent.
No.
It's just in the production. Like I've never been like a Lady Gaga fan, but when she did the national anthem for the Super Bowl,
Yeah.
I was completely blown away. I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
wow, what a voice, So
Lady Gaga I mean,
she's legit.
She's legit. I think she goes a little too far into the poppy stuff, but I mean, herself, totally legit, right?
Totally legit.
I'll tell you, the first time I ever heard her sing, I probably came home from drinking one Saturday night, and so I think I was asleep on my couch, and I had Saturday Night Live on, and she came on and woke me up.
Wow.
That's how much her voice got into my brain, when it woke me up, and I was going, who is this? Right. And I woke up, I can still picture it, because she was sitting at a piano with some outrageous costume on, kind of like
over the top, for sure.
Elton John used to wear, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of reminded me of Elton John. And I was just, I was blown away.
Yeah. That national anthem that she did, I was like, wow, because it's almost a cappella at that point.
Yeah.
And just, it was just one of those. It takes a lot for a singer to give me goosebumps, but that was just like, wow, chilling.
Yeah.
You nailed it, lady.
And she's a great actress too. I think I'm not a huge fan of her movies, but I really liked her in American Horror Story. She was on one season of American Horror Story, and she did a phenomenal job, I think. And I kind of wanted her to come back, but they change that all the time. So the stars never come back on that show. But she's a great actress too. Yeah, she's got a lot going on. Yeah. And then the one thing I really like about some stars, and because this is probably what I would have done if I was a rock star, right? I'd make all my money and then do what I want. Right. and that's kind of what she was doing at some point when she was singing with Tony Bennett. Right. I mean, she was singing old, tunes from the 50s and 60s and stuff. And, she didn't need to do that. She wanted to do that. Right. It's like, after the Black Crowes made all their money, they decided they wanted to be a jam band. Right. And I go, more power to you, Black Crowes. I might not necessarily like that, but you're following what you want to do, not what the record companies want you to do and stuff like that. And so I admire artists that do that and just don't churn out the same crap every, album. Right.
Yeah. I think probably my favorite band of all time was Rush, and they did their own thing from day one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. A 20-minute song, no problem.
Yeah, I know.
Right. 2112. Yeah. Like that album is just like, to me, like still a very high bar.
Well, back in the 70s, I'm sorry, early 80s, I had a girlfriend who loved Rush. And so I took her to see the Moving Pictures tour. So unfortunately, it was the only time I was able to see Rush. But, I still remember sitting in that concert being totally blown away that much music was coming from three people. Right? No pre-recording, no Pro Tools, no tapes, no nothing. Everything came from their fingertips, right? And I was blown away that three people could make that much music. I mean, make that much sound.
Yeah.
Right.
Very big sound, very full. Just and the musicianship.
Oh, yeah.
And they were a working band. Like they played so many concerts, and they were so tight.
Yeah.
They
truly seem to love what they did too, right? If you ever see them like backstage or talking with each other, they seem to really enjoy it, right?
And they enjoy each other's company. What a magical way to live your life,
Yeah.
Wow.
Did you see them? They did a surprise guest appearance on the live South Park thing that was released a year or two ago. Oh, you
No,
have
but
to watch that.
I do remember the South Park intro to Tom Sawyer
Yeah.
at their concerts. Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
that
so,
was funny.
one of the guys in South Park, the guy who writes most of the music, right? He loves Rush, right? He's made that abundantly clear through his career. And so the other guy, the blonde guy, he arranged for Rush to be at this concert, and the other guy didn't know it. So, Geddy Lee and what's his name come out. This was after Neil died, right? So it was Geddy Lee
Alex.
and Alex Lifeson, right? They come walking out and blew him away, and probably did Tom Sawyer. I forget what song they did, but yeah. Yeah. Okay. I promised myself we wouldn't talk all about music, and look at us, right?
Well, there's one thing. There's one thing about music that's so related to software, and that is the team vibe.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever had the good fortune of playing with a group of guys for an extended period of time, but there's a point in time where that band, it's almost like you're getting telepathic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And same thing with a really good software team.
I agree. Totally.
You kind of know, it's just like putting a good song and a good piece of software are kind of synonymous in that capacity, where you have, certain team members are, your data and your services, or your bass and your drums, and you got the guys out and doing the UI. That's your melody. It's just, to me, that they're so similar.
They are very similar,
and the way you approach things, and the team vibe, like the longer a team is together.
Yeah.
A small committed team to a common goal is really a thing of beauty in software.
You're totally right. And through my career, I don't know about you, but I can only talk about myself, but at least in my career, I've only worked with probably less than a handful or less of really great teams like that. Right. And which spoils me for all the other teams because I know it works, right? I know you can find the team, right? They exist, but it's so hard to find. Right?
It is really hard to get that cohesiveness,
Just like bands, right? You look at
just
other
like
bands. When they break up and try to start other bands, it never works.
I was thinking the exact same thing. A band breaks up, one guy tries to make it as a solo artist.
It never works.
Even Freddie Mercury.
Yeah, he failed at that.
His solo stuff was garbage.
It was.
Like Queen, stellar. Like some of the stuff that they've put out. Yeah. It really is, when you're privileged to work on a team that has good cohesion, man, there's nothing like it.
Yeah, those are the teams where every morning I wake up and I want to go to work.
You can't wait to get rolling, and the velocity of that team is just so far ahead of the guys who are combative, and the egos. I'm sure you've been on those kind of teams too, where it's like, you have this ego and you got to deal with it every day, and it's like, do I even want to go to work today?
Yeah. Right. Well, last year I worked on a team for, luckily, a short time, where I was getting anxiety because I couldn't figure the people out, because they were so egotistical and they didn't want to listen, and I was having I was sitting there in my chair going, okay, every single person, I'm going to have to try to figure them out. Right. And I'm going to try to figure out their psyche just so we can get our job done. And I don't like that.
No, it's not a fun way to work.
No, it's not.
And it's like, so I was at Bank Mobile for probably around 5 years, right? And that was a small team, and it was just like that. Everybody was focused. The velocity was amazing. And then there was a management shift.
No, and that screws everything up.
Well, I tried to fight the good fight but you know, it kind of fell on dead ears. And
Yeah.
that's not to say that I don't appreciate what they were doing, but anyway, at that point, I made a change to start building tech for a HVAC company that wanted to franchise globally. But before that got off the ground, one of the major investors had a heart attack, and just everything kind of went to, you know. But since then, I've been bouncing around, doing a lot of small contract stuff before I landed this position with ICS. And the one thing I have learned over time is that every developer can contribute, right? Everyone, there are so many smart, talented people in this industry.
Yes.
And if you're not utilizing them, that's a management problem.
Yes,
right?
I agree.
Because like I said, everyone can contribute. And, you know, I've even been in meetings where someone would make a suggestion and almost get ridiculed for it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, you're stifling the whole team vibe when you do that, you know, because a lot of times the quiet person in the room is
usually the smartest.
Got some really good ideas, you know, and you have to encourage that contribution, you know. So just, you know, it always falls back to management. You know, management is responsible for getting a good team together, and
they are,
you know. So,
and just like bands, right? You know,
just like bands,
some of these bands would not be near as big as they were if it wasn't for their management. Like Led Zeppelin, their manager, that dude, he was a bulldozer, right? And the guy who managed Kiss, who still manages Kiss, right? Since the 70s, the same guy, right? Whether you like Kiss or not, they're still around.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They're in their 70s,
you know,
and spitting fire in the air and flying through the air, and they're freaking in their 70s.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's almost as if they care about these individuals. You know what I mean? It's like we're on the same battlefield, you know, I care about you. I want the best for you, you know, and it's only a genuine person can do that.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about SQL Plus, because one of my friends is getting after me already that we're not talking about SQL. So let's in the chat. Mark is my friend. Mark is actually the guy who played lead guitar in the song at the beginning of the show.
Okay.
And, yeah, he lives here in San Diego. Hey, Mark. And
go, Mark.
So let's talk about SQL Plus. And I kind of wanted to ask you first, why did you develop it and what is it? So everybody knows.
Why did I develop it? Okay. I was working at Department of Homeland Security, which is infamous for probably having the biggest Oracle installation on the planet. It's not an environment where you're going to use an ORM. You're going to build stored procs. And if you can imagine a database that size, thousands of tables, right? Yeah. So for me to get data out, you know, it was first I had to figure out the schema, figure out where the data was, figure out how to join it, figure out how to make it efficient, figure out all of these things. So that was the work, right? Then we wanted to use this in the applications. So I felt like now I got to do it again, using JDBC, you know, the drivers. And I wasn't, man, there's so many backstories there, but to go quickly, Java's not my favorite language to work with.
I don't like it.
So to me, it was very painful to write this code again, because writing that SQL was the hard part. This is just duplicating that effort in another layer, right? So that's what it always felt like. So I was like, okay, well, I don't like writing Java. Is there a way to query the database to get metadata about the proc, right? What are the parameters going in? What are the parameters coming out, and what are the result sets? What do those things look like? And can I do this mapping automatically? So that's kind of where it started. It was just because I had a pain point that I had to address so I didn't drive myself crazy duplicating this code all the time, right? But then you have to forgive me, man. Like
That's
the
okay.
allergies are full swing. What was missing at that point then was the validation, right? So how do I validate these input parameters? How, you know what I mean? All of those things. So I started coming up with this syntax where I would take a variable name, -r said it was required, -l to specify a length, and so on, you know, email, right? So I had this crazy syntax, but it worked perfectly, right? I could query, I could get this variable, I could just say, okay, you're required, blah, blah, blah. And I could add all of that validation logic and it worked perfect. But, you know, to get developer buy-in on some kind of crazy syntax, it's just not going to happen, you know?
Yeah, it's
So
tough.
it served our team very well. Our velocity improved. Our services were getting better and better. I love Rush, but let's hear about SQL.
That's my friend Mark.
We're talking
Thanks, Mark.
about it now. We're talking about it.
And he's a musician.
Okay.
I can't believe he said that.
Yeah, traitor. So anyway, that was kind of how it started, right? And then I went from there to Bank Mobile, and now we're out of the Oracle world. We're back into the world of SQL Server, and it's like, okay, I'm going to carry some of this stuff forward, and just, you know, over time, iterate, improve, iterate, improve. And then what I came up with was what I call semantic tags. So if you could think of it in the C# world as data annotations, just think about putting your data annotations in your SQL and then generate your data services and include all of that validation, you know, so you eliminated your type mismatch errors, you eliminated any spelling errors, you have concrete types for everything, and a consistent way that these services work, right? So you have your input parameters are part of an input object with the built-in validation, and he's transportable. He can go anywhere, right? He's just a smart object. You have result objects that come out of that, and they're very DTO oriented because you don't have validation on your result sets, but you still have all the type mismatch things that can go wrong, right? That those things are just kind of a thing of the past. And that's, you know, we have a Visual Studio extension. You right click on your project, you say build the project, it goes to the database, it reads all of those stored procedures, it picks up all of the semantic tags, and it builds a nice object-oriented class library that I've used in Azure Functions, console apps, Blazor, Razor Pages, right? It's very portable because it's because of the object-oriented nature of it.
Right. So you're basically taking the, you know, the store procedures you guys have spent hours and hours writing the right way you want to write them, right? You press a button and all the code is generated to access it for you. Right? Yeah. So that is an amazing performance. I mean, cost savings, if you ask me, right? And we'll get into this, but it's also more performant, but it's a huge cost savings because quite frankly, when you were just talking about SQL Plus, I was going, you know, one of the things I don't like is I've spent all this time setting up the database and everything like that. And then I have to sit down and start writing all this boring, mundane code just to connect to the damn thing. Right.
Yes.
And that's the pieces I don't like doing. Right. I like the other stuff better.
Yes.
Right?
I am exactly the same way. If I went through the pain of writing that SQL, I shouldn't have to write anything else. Right. I should be able to just click a button and have that generated.
Exactly.
You know, and then the part that was missing always comes back to those semantic tags that you can put in as comments, right? Because I want those services to be self-validating, right? And then also, you know, the other small things like comments, right? You can put a comment on a parameter that gets escalated into the service. Now the developer using that service types, my input dot customer ID, and then your comment from your SQL is going to show up there,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's just it makes those services almost self-discoverable at that
Right.
point,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You don't have to look in the database to see if a value is nullable, right? That's
Right.
just identified there, right? So that's kind of the gist of it, and how we came to, this is version 4 now,
Mm.
4 of this tool. And people really like it. In fact, CSharpCorner's doing some rewriting of
That's right. They're
some of
using
their
it,
stuff.
right?
Yep,
Yeah.
they are
Yeah.
using it. And I had a chat with their lead dev, and he said without a doubt it has cut their development time in half.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Well, what you
That's a
showed me,
statement.
I can see that, from what you showed me, last week.
Yeah. Yeah.
So speaking of that, let's show everybody SQL Plus and how easy it is to do this.
Sure.
So we usually don't show code in this show, but we're going to this time because I think, this is a great tool that everybody needs to see. So I'm glad
Yeah.
Simon's on the ball and switching the screens properly. Thanks, Simon.
Okay. So, can you see my screen now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So this is this is a stored procedure. If we took this out of the equation, it's just a stored procedure,
Mm-hmm.
right? If we put this back in, that's telling the SQL Plus builder, hey, this is a procedure that someone is interested in building. So go collect all the metadata about it. And in this case, there's no real semantic tags going on for validation, etc. But you can see, we have a select type, and this is an instruction to SQL that says, hey, I'm a non-query.
Mm-hmm.
And we do have snippets here to make all of that stuff easy, right? So these are your routines.
Oh, these snippets are built into SQL Plus?
I have code snippets available. You download them and install them,
Yeah.
and there you go. So you can see this is, if I said it, this is a routine that has no result set, right? We support, you can return JSON. You can have a single row, which if you think about your output object, single row is going to give you a single entity.
Right.
A multi-row will give you a list of those entities.
A collection. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And multi-set is, I have a procedure that's going to return multiple result sets, right? And then you identify each result set in your code, and then it will build them into whatever name you specify for that particular result set. So, pretty much everything is supported. And then here's, like all of the other validation stuff, credit card, display, email, enum, error message, right? You have all of those tags that you can just drop in. And just to give you a quick example, this is a customer insert, right? That is going to be the name of your service. He will have inputs, right? He will have one single output, right? And then if we look at that in our first service, here is our customer input, right? You can see those properties are now here, the customer type, first name, last name, and email. Here's our output. All right, we have a customer ID as an output. So you call a service by creating an input object. There's our creating our input object. Then we pass that input object to our service.
And you get the ID back.
And he gets an output, right?
Yeah.
So if I actually debug this and run it, you can actually watch that, create the service. There's our input. There's our output. and you can see we have a foreign key constraint error, right? So these are where the remaining tags start to come into play. So this is just our first example, right? So then we go to the next level, and now we can start putting in these required.
Yes,
right?
on top of the parameters. Right.
On top of the parameters, right? These are max length. This is max length required and email.
So you're just sprinkling the T-SQL with comments basically that your program knows how to read, right?
Yes.
So they don't affect the SQL at all, right?
It's just a comment according to SQL.
It's just a comment. Yeah, it's not going to be compiled that way. It's just well, I guess it will be compiled that way, but yeah, they're just comments. They don't affect the actual SQL.
Yes, they don't affect the actual SQL, right? So this is now a very huge improvement, right?
But kind of like attributes. They're kind of like attributes in code, right?
Yes, it's exactly like attributes in code. In fact, if we look at our data service, we look at our model for this guy, you can see there are our fields, and we've now added the data annotations based on the comments that were provided.
Yeah, and this, you know, you'd probably have to tell me if you've experienced this, but I would think that, so there's always, especially ever since ORMs were created, right? And, you know, the first major ORM I've ever used was way back in the late 2000s with Entity Framework, right? And I've never looked back after that, right? And I was so glad when they went to you know, classes instead of that old thing they used to do in the beginning. And so
was it a data table? I think
it was called
Link to SQL, and then
there was Link to SQL. It's died in 6 months, but there was that other that other huge file they would create where you drag around the tables, right, and do the links and everything, and that would create. Yeah. So, and I remember then, and I'm sure it still happens now, that, you know, the DBAs hated that, right? And one of the reasons was, honestly, you know, the first few versions of Entity Framework didn't create the greatest SQL in the world. Yeah, we all know that. You know, the DBAs were complaining about that, but I think also, and you have to tell me if you've experienced this, and that is DBA. I don't think DBAs inherently would like ORMs because we're kind of cutting them out of the picture, right? And you know, the database is their domain, right? And they don't like to be cut out of the picture. And in this case, you know, with SQL Plus, they're not cut out of the picture, right? They're back in the team writing, they're doing what they should be doing and writing great SQL T-SQL queries, right?
Yes. And if you have a DBA who's writing the SQL, if you give him access to those code snippets, he's now the author of your data services.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because all you have to do is click a button and you have your services generated. And I'll show you what that looks like real quick.
So there's less animosity between us and the DBAs, right?
Well, okay. So there's two ways to look at this. Like, I don't have a problem with Entity Framework. I think it's a great tool. I think it serves a lot of people well. And especially when people start, they're not so concerned with performance, right? They just want to get something stood up for their business to add value to their business with the least amount of friction, right? I mean, it's a great tool for that.
Yes, it is.
And you know, with the migrations, you can do your database. I mean, you can really get a lot accomplished that way. But there's not a lot of greenfield apps that you're going to start day one using Entity Framework and building out your database that way, right? A lot of times you're starting in the middle, or you know, even if you are the type of developer who prefers to start with the database design, right? So it's, you know, you always have that you know, do I like to design my database and figure out how to store my
Data.
business
Yeah.
information efficiently, or do I start with my UI and then try to figure out how to save it later?
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah.
you know,
I always start with the data.
okay.
Right?
So that's me
for
too.
me, you know, that because everything comes from data, right? You have
Yes.
to start there. You can't you can't have a UI until you have data.
Right.
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 That's my opinion, at least.
Yes. And I am the same way. And I want to know, I want to take the steps necessary upfront to make sure that my database is defined and designed so that it works efficiently.
Yeah.
Right. And that isn't something that I want to delegate to a rookie.
Right. Exactly.
Or someone who's not familiar with database design. Right. That's, you know, we talked about this, how much tech has come and gone. You know, if you might have had a VB app in the 90s, then went to legacy ASP, then went to web forms, then went to MVC. Now we got Blazor and Maui and WPF and all, you know,
never stops.
It never stops. And, you know, and then, you know, the whole other side of that, Angular, React, you know, all of these technologies come and go, you know.
Right. They do.
But that database,
it's always going to be there.
he might have to live for 50 or 100 years.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Right.
There's databases in existence for decades and decades.
Right? Decades. Right.
Yeah.
You measure database lifespan in decades, and you measure UI technology in years.
Yes.
Right. So you better have that right, you know, because I will admit that SQL is a great language to know, but refactoring databases is a very challenging.
It's a nightmare, and quite frankly, because you know, I worked at a company here in San Diego, and I tried to get them to do that for 4.5 freaking years, and they wouldn't do it. And then towards the end, they were asking me, why can't we do this stuff? And I go, because you won't do what I said, and that is to break down and redesign this crappy database, because at the time it was the worst database I've ever seen. Because I'll say this as long as I've been a programmer, that the worst databases are designed by programmers. I'm sorry, you know, we're not the best people to design databases, right? I can do it, I have done it, you know, but I've done it with a DBA sitting next to me, right? And I designed a brand new, you know, with this guy, I designed a brand new database system for proflowers.com, right? And because even in the early days of proflowers.com, we realized we needed to redo the database, because like most projects, you know, the first code of proflowers.com was written by these two guys in their basement, right? Who shouldn't have been doing what they were doing, because they weren't really they weren't really software engineers or database engineers, right? And so, you know, luckily, at least ProFlowers kind of realized that and going, okay, we need to, you know, we need to redo this, right? But many companies I work for, I would say the majority of them won't do it or can't do it, right? Yeah, and then you're stuck in this never-ending world of crap, because you're just band-aiding the crap over and over until someday it finally dies, right?
Yes. Yes. And then you can, you know, if you're experienced with database design, you can spot that day one.
Yes.
You can see, okay, this, like, that was probably the best thing that happened at Bank Mobile. They were like, Alan, put together this database. And I probably spent 3 months on database design, right? And you think about everything, right? You think about, how is this data going to be accessed? You know, what's the throughput? What are my relationships? All of those things. You can get that database, I'm not going to say perfect, but you can get it very good, right? And that will stand the test of time, right? He's going to just hum. because you were a friend to it early on. Then you see the other extreme where this database was probably put together over a period of 10 years. People
Mhm.
didn't really understand it. They just
And
kept
just slop
bolting
stuff into it.
slop
Yeah.
stuff into it. You know, you have a table that has 15 varchar max columns in it. Well, okay, you're gonna have problems here, right? So many things that come back to a good database design.
Mhm.
And SQL too. SQL as a
Yeah.
language, you
Yeah.
know, it's been around and it's gonna be here. You know, I always encourage people, you know, you see these things on Twitter, you know, someone will ask, what language should I learn next? I know this, and this. And, you know, I will always chime in and say, you know, I
SQL.
know this goes against the
T-SQL.
grain, that, but you ought to look at SQL,
Yeah.
right? And to be quite honest, it has kept me employed
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
probably 40 years.
Yeah. It's been around
close,
forever,
close,
right?
close to 40 years, you know?
Yeah.
If somebody is looking for someone and they need someone who understands SQL, well,
You're
that's
the
just
guy.
one thing on the resume.
Yeah.
Uh, but
And that's,
even
go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
The one thing I wanted to say, I've said this, many times before that, and I've even written about it, that, to me, when I look, when I look at the architecture for an application, right? Um, you know, and when I talk about this in conferences or what I write about it, or even when I talked about it when I taught at the university, right? I always said that, to me, the database is the foundation of like your home, right? And if you don't have a good foundation, guess what's going to happen? It's going to crack and fall down at some point, right? I
It's the
guarantee it.
drums
I've
and
seen it.
bass, Dave. On
Yeah,
Rockin' the Code, it's the drums and bass.
that's right. Right.
Right?
And if you don't have a good foundation, and that's what I told this company, this one company towards the end of my 4.5 years of begging them to redo the database. I stood up in front of the management of the company, the VPs of the company, and I told them, that if you don't break I've been telling you for 4.5 years to redo the database. You guys aren't listening to me. If you don't listen to me, your competitor is going to overtake you, which has happened in reality. Or it's going to take so long, you're going to lose customers, which happened, right? And I told them those two things, and they all looked at me with blank stares. And luckily, my boss, who is one of the best bosses I've ever had, piped up and said, "Dave has been telling you this for 4.5 years. Why don't you listen to him?" Right? But that's how strongly I feel about the database, right?
Yes.
Even though I'm not a DBA or anything like that, right? Is if you don't get that right, the rest of it's just not going to be great.
Yes, right? And that's and you will spend the rest of the life of that trying to circumvent the problems that you created.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
It's miserable, right? I mean, you're gonna.
It is.
You see, a table with 10,000 rows, and that should be absolutely nothing, right? 10,000 rows in this day and age in a database is nothing.
It's nothing,
right? But you have to add a caching layer over it because it's taken 10 seconds to query this table, and it's like, well, something is radically wrong.
Right.
Right.
And I wrote a book about performance, even though this part isn't in the book. But whenever somebody comes to me about they're experiencing performance problems, the first thing I ask them is about their database, right? Because you can optimize your code all you freaking want to, but if you don't take care of the database, it doesn't matter. Right? It's still going to suck. It's still going to take a minute to get data back. Yes. Right? If you don't have that right.
Nothing will kill you like a bad database design.
Yeah.
And then rather than fix that, well, let's get the new shiny new tool. Let's add this to the mix, right? Then, okay, let's add this to the mix and add this to the mix. And, there's degrees of scale, that you have to contend with. Like straight up database to UI is going to get you probably 90%. right? You don't
Yeah.
even have to think about caching. When you have to deal with web scale, that's a different story. Like a CSharpCorner that's going to get hammered all day long,
or different regions and stuff like that.
yes,
That's still,
or,
that's
I worked with a company called ListTrack. On Black Friday, they sent 1.5 billion emails.
Yeah.
Okay, that's web scale, right? That's crazy, right?
Yeah. Well, even when I worked, I did a short stint at the cell phone company Kyocera. I don't know if they still sell cell phones anymore, but I remember, they were using Oracle, and they were, inserting millions and millions of records into their database a day, because I asked them, why aren't you using SQL? And they go, well, we don't feel SQL can handle it. And I go, okay, but but that's how much data they're processing a day. Can you think about how much data like Facebook or somebody like that is doing a day? I mean,
right. That's what I mean by web scale, right? That's your database isn't going to hold up under those conditions.
No.
So if you are fortunate enough to be the owner of Facebook, well, then you have to look at alternative technology. But for the 99% of the rest of the world, you can eliminate a lot of frustration.
Well, that's why Facebook writes their own technology, right?
Yes,
because
they
don't use other people's technology. They write it from scratch, right? They write their own compilers and everything. Yeah. Because they have to.
They have to.
The immense scale they do on a minute basis, right?
On a minute basis.
It's mind-boggling. I can't even imagine something like that, to tell you the truth. And I've been doing this a long time.
Well, Oracle and Exadata and what they had at DHS was an extreme system as well.
I bet.
I mean, I believe the numbers on that were 450 million transactions per second that thing was capable of handling. Okay, right. Which is insane. But if you think about every piece of cargo and transaction and passenger and plane in the sky and cargo ships and where they live and where they are, and the amount of data.
Yeah.
I don't think you ever max that thing out.
Yeah. And I can tell you, I'm not an expert with Postgres or anything, but whenever I work for a team that uses SQL, because I've been using SQL Server my whole career, and they always, usually always complaining about performance. And the first thing I ask them is about the database, or I go look at their database. I go, well, now I see why your performance sucks. You don't have any indexes. You don't have anything set up correctly, right? I mean, who wrote this? Programmer. That's why.
Yeah. And, it's not just the data. You can't just say these are the best practices for a database, right? Because everyone is different.
Right.
It's like, how are you accessing the data, right? What columns do need indexes, what columns don't, because there's a plus and a minus to everything that you do there. So it's really has to be tailored to the needs of the business. And it's more art than science. It really is.
It's like putting together a song.
Putting together a song. So there's one other quick little thing that we can show you here.
Because then we got to go. We've digressed. Out of time. Yeah.
Yes. So this is a full-fledged SQL
Simon,
Plus routine.
Can you switch the screen, Simon? Simon might be talking to a friend. Okay. Simon. See, he's doing something. Sorry. Okay, we'll keep talking. Okay. I don't know if Simon's going to come back.
Okay.
He's in a hotel room with some people, and who knows what's going on back there.
If anybody really needs to learn more about this, they can go to the website, and I have videos that walk you through all of that stuff. But
you need him. He's here now. Do you need him to switch?
Sure, he can switch screens.
Can you switch to his screen, Simon?
Are we on screen now?
Yep.
Okay. So this is maxing out what SQL Plus can do for you, right? We have default values on parameters. We can say this is a in-out parameters. It's required. And here's your comment that's going to show up in IntelliSense, right? We also, in this proc, we have a try catch around the insert and the update, because we can violate an index.
Sure.
We can violate a foreign key constraint. So we have that in there. And then this is the other really cool feature, is these return value enumerations. I can say this, when we insert a customer, I can set a return value as inserted, right? And that's going to be available as an enum on your output object.
Yeah.
Right. And then we can say if it was updated, you know, it was modified. If you try to update something and it wasn't found, you can tell the person that, because you only have one opportunity to call it and get a result. Right. And to say, okay, let's just let the developer handle the errors, right? If I would see a duplicate, I know I violated the index. But now that developer has to have at least rudimentary knowledge about the database,
right?
And the fact that those things are there, and I need to trap for them, right? I need to, right? And then you have to duplicate that, right? And what we really strive for, and one of my biggest goals was to be dry. You know, don't repeat yourself,
right?
Right. So in here we're handling the duplicate email violation and the foreign key constraint. So then this model is almost a view model at this point. I can bind this directly to a Razor Page app, right? And just have that validation work, right? So yeah, it's really powerful and saves a lot of time. And I use this tool, you know, not every day, but at least a couple times a week. I'm doing something with SQL and generating these services and wiring them up to Blazor forms.
Well, I can tell you, you know, the next time I'm on a project that uses SQL Server, I'm definitely using this. You know, that's it, I can see the value, tremendous value in this, and not only for me, of course, but for whoever I'm working for. And the performance is great. It's, you know, probably better than any framework, and so yeah, it's a great tool. I'm glad you developed it, because I want to use it.
Well, when you get to that point, just reach out and we'll get you set up real quick. And like I said, if you go to the website, I've spent so much time putting together good documentation for it, videos for it, you know, and code walkthroughs. There's a GitHub repo that shows. Well, this project here is in a GitHub repo, so you can get to that.
Go check it out.
Yeah, and it basically walks through every scenario. There's a console app for your first service. It uses Blazor that's calling Azure functions that are exposing those services. There's a test project in there, and then also a Razor Pages app in there.
Yeah. Cool. So it looks like a great tool that people should be using, and I'm glad that, you know, CSharpCorner is using it, and so we'll probably hear more from them, or I'm sure the people who work on CSharpCorner will write articles about it.
Yeah, what a great endorsement, huh? We cut our development time in half. More than half.
Yeah, right? And that's what teams want to do. They want to cut development time, and this is a way to do it.
Yeah.
You know?
And the other thing, like the maintainability of it, like if you go in and you change that proc, you just come out here, you know, right click, say SQL plus build, connect.
All the dev has to do is run that, and they're all done.
That's
right?
it.
How freaking easy is that?
Boom. My services are done. So yeah.
All right, but we've got to go. It's we're already at time, and I know Simon wants to continue his YEPC. Got to wrap up now. Yes, Simon, I know. So I'm going to ask you the question that I ask everybody before we go, but I added a new one because of some stuff I've been thinking about this week, and that is the first one I'm going to ask is the new one, and that is, you know, what brings you happiness in your tech career besides income?
What brings me?
Because we all know about that, but
It's actually something that's really happened a lot lately and collaterally to SQL Plus, and that is helping people
Mhm.
build software that's, meets all of the criteria in less time, right?
Yeah.
Uh, like like a lot of times, the way this business is growing, it's at the company level, right? We don't have a lot of individuals come in, sign
Sure.
up, go and
Sure.
off and running. It's usually a
Yeah.
company that's interested.
Yeah.
They reach out, and I go through a presentation with them and I get them started. And there's usually a couple of those guys with the ego that are in a bad mood because they have to learn a new tool, right? And we're creatures of habit. We don't like to
Yeah.
change.
That's true.
So, but like an hour or so into it, these guys are like tilting their heads like a curious dog. It's like, wow,
This is
can
possible?
this is possible. I can stop writing all of this middle layer code. And even the Dapper guys, Dapper to me is just validation that a lot of people would prefer to use SQL over Entity Framework,
Yeah.
right? The
Yeah.
popularity of it just says, you know what, I like writing SQL. Let me just have
Yeah.
access to it, right? And now
Mhm.
here you go. Just write
Yeah.
your SQL and generate your services.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, helping these guys along and, seeing how much time they're saving and just making their job easier, that to me is really rewarding.
Yeah.
And then probably the end users for the personal stuff
Right.
that I build,
Yeah.
clearly, I
That's a
mean,
great answer. Yeah. I like it. Yeah. I kind of feel the same way about what brings me happiness. So my last question, because I got to let you go, is and I definitely want to have you back someday. But my last question I ask all my guests is, and I'm probably going to know the answer to this, is what do you do for fun?
what do I do for fun? Probably, you don't know the answer to
Oh
this.
yeah, because I was going to say what's behind you,
That's fun, but
because that's what I do for fun.
I really like camping. We
Mm.
have a small camper that we pull around. It's got a lot of solar on it. I can pull into the middle of nowhere and just unwind
Yeah,
and
yeah,
enjoy nature. Uh, and it kind of resets you,
yeah,
and
yeah.
reprioritizes your life as a whole.
Get away from everything,
Get
and
away from
yeah,
everything. Yes.
yeah, yeah. I almost a decade ago, and I actually went down to the RV, place here in San Diego, and I was looking at RVs. I was going to buy one of those big, huge RVs, and my plan was to sell my house, buy that, and just travel around the country coding. That was my plan. It didn't happen, but yeah,
Yes, that would be an interesting lifestyle. I like the home base, and my
yeah,
wife likes the home base.
sure, sure.
But we have plans. We're going to do a couple weeks in Maine this year. We did
Mm,
that last year. The scenery there is just epic,
yeah,
and
yeah. I
really
like
nice
Maine.
hiking
Maine's
trails.
beautiful. Maine's very beautiful. Yeah,
Yes, Maine
yeah,
is very nice.
yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
that's
great. Well, thanks for being on the show. I could keep talking, but you've got allergies and Simon's got to go. So, and I've got to go too. So and people don't like to watch more than half an hour anyway. So,
okay. Well,
uh,
thank you for having me. Congratulations on your book, getting that
oh, thank
done.
you.
I know that's a lot of work.
Yeah, yeah.
And sure, we can
Thanks.
do this again.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this episode and learning more about not only you and music, but also SQL Plus.
Okay.
All
Thank you,
right. Thank
sir.
you. Thank you so much. Well, that was a great interview. He might stick around because Simon's not paying attention, but oh, he is. Yay. Yeah, I really like that interview. That was I'm glad Alan was recommended to me and I got him on the show for you all because I want you to learn about this stuff because I want to make your life at work easier too. And definitely SQL Plus is the way to do that, as you heard. Right. All right. Just a couple more slides. Here's my humor for today. I thought this was funny. Those medical bracelets that, if you get found passed out and you got to get an EpiPen or something like that. I love this one. If you're found dead, delete my browser history and destroy my phone. I don't know who came up with that, but I think that's hilarious. But yeah, that's funny. All right. So unfortunately, again,